Minister, can we just perhaps continue from where we left off? And I was looking at your directive, which is EB4. It's in the bundle, exhibit bundle 3, at pages 49 to 50. You have it in front of you. Your directive. Do you accept that the two reasons that you provided in the directive is at page 50, that last paragraph? You say, my observation in this regard, as indicated above, is that the further existence of the team is no longer required, nor is it adding any value to policing in South Africa. Although those are the two reasons that you gave to the National Commissioner.
Look, there are three directives that I gave. But on this particular one, on the disbandment, I wasn't necessarily getting involved in outlining all the reasons that I had. But this was just an indicator, an indication, if you like, that I could indicate in the letter. But it was not all necessarily, because as you see, this is a very, 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 on all three, they are similar. Just an outline that I could squeeze into the letter, because I wanted it to be very concise and not...
So can we accept that these are some of the reasons, but not all the reasons?
Yes, particularly...
And then perhaps to assist you, the other one would have been the one you contend was discussed in the November meeting on the organizational structure.
That's why
that was also, so that's not here.
And the budget, the budgetary issues, and the concerns that were raised by the people that I said to you and your team that they need to be afforded an opportunity. So there's to address the Arrow comment. So there's a whole range of issues here, but what I wrote there was merely a high-level summary of what I had as a concern, but the actual reasons, I outlined them yesterday, and for your benefit again, I started off with...
I wanted to summarize that for you. Minister, please understand we do have a time constraint. This is our second day, and obviously you're entitled, and that's the
so as long as
space we gave you yesterday. You spent a lot of time on outlining your reasons.
Yeah. As long as we agree that there's a whole range of issues, but I couldn't squeeze all of them there.
I was just addressing to what is here and what you wrote, and what may have been in your mind at the time when you sent the directive. You explained yesterday to the Honourable Committee these other reasons. They've heard you. They will no doubt ask you questions on them. So that is part of the record. Just to summarize, you spoke about budgetary constraints, you spoke about the Haas, you spoke about Mashale, you spoke about Fort Hare, you spoke about Fadil Adams, and then on page 64 of your statement, paragraph 140, you also spoke about some other complaints, which you, perhaps to be fair, you either won't or can't disclose. They may have been conveyed to you in confidence or privately. But in terms of our national commissioner, who, assuming you were authorized or had the power to do so, to direct that the team be disestablished, what you're telling him is the team is no longer required, it's not adding any value, and that is, as you, to use your words, that is my observation. And then there would have been the other communication of in the one and the other meeting we don't have a minute of, the 24th of November.
Yes, and I want to remind you of the new organogram that I spoke about at length from 2019, based on the study, not just the organogram that has just been signed now, but that was agreed.
The 2019 one.
Yes, proceeding up to the new one that on which the organogram that we built on the studies that had been done in the department before that. Yeah.
So those would have been the reasons that the National Commissioner would have been aware of at the time that he received your directive, which would have been, I think, on the 2nd or 3rd of January, a few days after your directive. But he wouldn't have been aware of some of the other reasons that you mentioned yesterday. Would that be fair to say that?
No, I wouldn't have been aware of.
No, he wouldn't have been aware of these other reasons.
Like which one?
Sorry?
Like which one?
No, let me put to you what he would have been aware of from what is in this directive, and the discussion you say that took place in November of 2024, which is before the directive, about the status of the unit and where it fits into the picture. And we discussed that. We said, well, it wasn't an express item on the agenda where the PKTT was discussed, but you said it was mentioned. He mentioned it. So he's aware of that. But some of the other reasons, like the budgetary constraints, Daas, Mashale, Forte, Fadil Adams, further complaints, you wouldn't have shared those with him. You wouldn't have shared these reasons with the National Commissioner before the 31st of December 2024.
No, Daas and Mashale, they wrote these things, the bulk of them, last year. And I did have a discussion with the National Commissioner about them, and I think they wrote letters to the Portfolio Committee last year already. And remember that I also said about Mashale, I even referred some matters, her profile to the IGI to say, I keep on getting correspondence from this lady shortly after I got appointed. So I was aware, and National Commissioner did say, oh, now this lady I'm aware about, she has also shared things with me, but she complains, and we look at what she's complaining about, and so on. So I was aware of all these things including, I was aware, and the department, National Commissioner, would have been aware of all these things. I may not have shared everything with him, but they were aware of them. That includes my main reason, my argument that we may be dealing with something that is outside the PFMA at the end of the day, as I advanced yesterday.
Well, I'll put it to you, and I don't want to debate it any further. The record will speak for itself. That's certainly not the impression we got from the evidence of the National Commissioner.
No, it's...
He said the sum total of his evidence on the directive is that this came as a huge surprise to him. It was never discussed with him. The last time he saw you and you saw him was at, I think it was a parade on the 28th of December, sorry, it was apparently, I'm corrected, a funeral on the 28th of December. You were there. I think it was in KZN. Mkhwanazi was also there. And this, it would seem, would have been a perfect opportunity for you to say to them, although it's obviously not appropriate perhaps at a funeral, but to go aside afterwards or whenever to say, gentlemen, you know, I've been grappling with this thing. I've received all these complaints. I've received these letters from the Haas and Mashale. I mentioned it to you in the November meeting, and I am now quite convinced that this team should be disestablished.
Now, that was National Commissioner's evidence. I'm here to give my evidence.
Yeah, sure.
And that is not what I'm saying. I am saying after the 28th, I got more time when I got home to complete what I was developing. In those 2 or 3 days after resting and not going up and down, and I started summarizing in my head and getting to think what I would settle with finally, which then gave rise to me writing that letter on the 31st. I may have on the 28th or before, and you don't normally go to a funeral and then pull people aside. That's unnatural. It can happen only on post-thinking that you could have pulled people aside, but natural in the flow of things, it doesn't flow like that. But I'm saying there were a number of things that were in my head for quite some time after our meeting on the 21st with deputy ministers, how to approach, how to package, how to engage the National Commissioner. So I had not completed my thinking by that time until I settled down and thought carefully about what I wanted to do.
Well, even more so, Minister, with respect, I mean, you could have at least mentioned to
Honorable Matthys.
Thank you. Just on a question of clarity, Minister, did you say you engaged the deputy ministers, both of them, during that time, or did I mishear you? You said there was 2 days. I heard you say something about deputy ministers. Can I just get clarity, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm speaking about a day when I convened a meeting with the 2 deputy ministers to discuss what we had been receiving since we got appointed, in what form and what we had done about some of the things that we received, and so on. We had a discussion, and the resolution there said, go and engage the National Commissioner. But we didn't discuss the format and the details. So it was left to me to think what I would engage him on and how and all of that. And this is what I say. I ended up with the letter of the 31st.
As I was about to say, Minister, even more so on the 28th, it may not have been an appropriate moment to discuss the demise of the PKTT when you just buried one of your soldiers.
Senior Counsel, there is a hand of Honorable Nomvalo behind.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I just want to have a clear understanding of the response that has been given by the Minister to the question about the reasons. Is the Minister saying the Commissioner was aware that part of the reasons that led to the disbandments is what was written by Mary Diaz? Or he says the Commissioner was aware that Mary Diaz had written something like that, but he was not aware that that which she wrote was not part of the reasons that led to the disbandment. Because knowing that Mary Diaz had a perspective and that her perspective is constituted the reasons for the disbandment are two different things. So I just need a clear distinction on that. What response is he giving to the council? Was he aware of the perspective, or he was aware that the perspective of Mary Diaz formed part of the reasons for the disbandment? What was their response? I just need clarity on that.
Minister?
Thank you very much. I am saying when I settled down in those 2 or 3 days, I brought back everything that I had come across since I had been appointed. What do I do with these things? Because I had to weigh them and say, what do I do with them in order? Remember, at the top of my mind is the imperatives of the 7th administration. It is the safety of the people. It is the concerns that I raised with the National Commissioner, Deputy National Commissioners, and Provincial Commissioners in November, when we met them at Griffiths Cruan, saying, I'm being haunted by murders, the high rate of murders, the proliferation of firearms in communities and the havoc that these firearms are causing, and the drugs that these things are causing. So I kept on thinking about these matters very, very hard and very, very to the best of my ability in terms of thinking. And I then say, settle down. What do I do with all these things that I've collected in my capacity as Minister of Police on behalf of the people of South Africa? I then Mary Diaz's letters and concerns, Mashale's letters and concerns and everything, the budget, how we are using the budget, and possible alternatives of using the budget. The work within SAPS that started way before I arrived and what could have been done and so on. All that bundle of things constituted what I settled down on and said, let me write a letter and it must take this particular form. And I did indicate yesterday that one of the things that came into my mind was to say, when the year starts, how do we start in a manner that brings about vibrancy along the lines that constitute expectations of the people on us in a way that will cause us and force us to, engage. And this thing is about change. How do you go about changing some of the narratives that should change within SAPS in favor of the people of South Africa, consolidating their safety? That is the matter. That was not just anything that Mary Diaz wrote, but how do I bring all those things as a collective so that they are put in a manner that constitute my reasons when we met. So this is just a high-level summary on the 2 issues, but the breakdown of those matters is what I have submitted here.
Are you fine, Honorable Member?
Not really, Chair, but I think as it continues, maybe I'll be fine.
Okay.
But I'm not fine.
Just carry the question on your shoulder. And at the right time, you can offload it. Senior Counsel, you may proceed.
Minister, all these things weighed heavily on your mind. All these factors, you say, they weighed heavily on your mind. All these factors, not just the 2 that's mentioned in your letter.
Yes, all these matters, they constitute the actual material things behind those two sentences that you see, or one sentence that you see in those two terms.
Okay, so you don't record that in the letter to say to the National Commissioner, you know, there's a host of issues that weigh heavily on my mind and that concern me. But in summary, I've concluded that the team is no longer needed because it's not adding any value to policing in South Africa. At least one leaves it open-ended for you to come back and say, okay, what were these things that weighed heavily in your mind? We don't get that impression from your letter. Now, we discussed the letter yesterday, and you spent quite a bit of time explaining yourself. So and you also accepted that you could have phrased the letter differently.
Not necessarily. You remember, you went a long way yesterday on the tone of the letter yourself, and you even suggested.
And you agreed that you may have.
Let me finish. You suggested a particular format to me, which was the same thing but in a different tone, and I said to you, well, you are putting that in the way you are putting. And then I said, Singakalisana, I could accept that that could have been a different tone, but it doesn't change anything in terms of the content of what I wanted to convey to the National Commissioner, except that the tone could have been softer. And but not that there's anything wrong with my letter legally and constitutionally, and in terms of what I wanted to convey.
And you say you've accepted full responsibility for this, what's in the letter and the directive that you issued?
I don't want to leave any doubt in terms of who wrote the letter and why was the letter written. I therefore take full responsibility.
No, that's exactly why you're here.
Yes.
Because the committee is holding you to account.
Even assure you that I was sober when I wrote this letter.
I don't think anybody ever suggested that you were not.
Yes.
Although it's that time of the year.
Yes.
That I can't quite remember what.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, we never suggested that, you know, you're a minister of state, and we expect you to be of sober mind.
Yes.
Especially over this period when you're Minister of Police, when there's lots of tragedy and killings and so on. So that's fair comment, and I don't think anybody suggests anything else.
Yes.
Maybe the tone would have been different had you had a couple. Yeah. So anyway, on a more serious note, is it also your evidence that you were not assisted at all with this letter? There was no one else who did a draft, or did I recall you saying that you your advisor may have assisted?
Yes, in terms of contribution to the letter substance, it was me and Advocate Bikole.
Okay.
And then the Chief of Staff was merely conveying, not contributing in any manner on the wording and on any other aspect of the letter.
Okay.
It was just me and the special advisor.
Just you and you mainly you and Advocate Bikole.
Advocate Bikole, yes.
Yeah. So when Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi tells us that Ngabindi told him that I think he mentioned quite a few drafts were exchanged. He was waiting for the final draft. Would he have referred to the exchange of drafts between you and Advocate Bikole?
Well, I don't know what General Mkhwanazi was talking about.
No, he was talking about what Nkabinde told him.
Yes, I don't know what they discussed, whether they discussed up to that. I did have a conversation with Chief of Staff in terms of the substance of what they discussed. And they gave me a different version, which I will go to later on. But what I do know is that they did speak.
So just to round off on the directive, at the time, had you sought or been given legal advice on whether you could issue this kind of directive?
At the time of right, or
at the time that you drafted and wrote this directive with the assistance of your special advisor?
I didn't go wider than the special advisor because he happens to be an advocate, to say, what is your first impression on this letter in terms of the Constitution and in terms of legislation? And he didn't doubt, he had no doubt that it is within the Constitution and it is within the legislative framework.
Because it's apparent from the letter that you, at the time when you drafted the letter and signed the letter, that is your signature there, is it?
My signature?
Yeah, there on at the end of the letter.
Definitely, it's my signature.
Good. So at that time you accepted that you need to provide some reasons to the National Commission as to why you're issuing this directive.
Yes, but let me just indicate something that will interest you and the other comment. I wrote the letter and as I wrote, and after completing the letter, I was envisaging a meeting, that is the letter where we would discuss, have a first discussion. That's why I put a date on the 20th to say, forward me with kind of an interim response, and then a fuller engagement at a later stage at UNESCO. I was firm and clear that we would need to discuss some aspects, but those things were somehow, or to a great extent, affected by what I will talk about later. But as I said yesterday, I didn't envisage my directive as a drill. I mean, in the context of a drill situation. I envisaged it in the context of what happens in a work situation when you are at work with the Director General, that you do engage, even on difficult matters. But I'm aware that it then brought in a difficult situation. But when in a work situation, a difficulty arises, that's where you get the best in terms of how the people you work with behave. That's where they get an opportunity to display even what is internal within them. Not when there's you have a normal situation at work. A lot of things get suppressed in terms of you knowing exactly the kind of people that you work with.
But the people you work with, and especially whom you give, if you're in a higher position of authority, the way they behave and the way they respond would often depend on the way you address them, isn't it? And the tone of any letter or instruction or directive, the way it's written.
Not necessarily. It doesn't. There's a difference between reasoning things out and the way you respond to a situation emotionally. There's a difference. I'm not talking about emotions. I'm talking about substantive reasoning when you have matters before you, how you react at that level of reasoning and rationalizing on things. And I am certain that I dealt more on the aspect of rationalizing things out with a view to bringing something that would change the way in which South African Police Service render services to the people of South Africa, towards improvement, towards realistically responding to the concerns that people raise throughout, including the portfolio committee. Beyond saying we have noted your concerns, we are noting your concerns, but we end up not doing, in essence, not doing anything that would change their concerns. And I'm lighthearted when it comes to what people have to say to you in terms of their expectations as a minister at a national level. They have huge expectations. And I'm saying this in a situation where perceptions are very, very, very strong outside that we're not doing enough for their safety in South Africa. So you are on the spotlight. You have to think even beyond what is happening. I mean, you can't just keep on saying, yeah, the budget is small. Yeah, the number of police has been reduced. We should be having 200. Those reasons are fine. You can advance them ordinarily when you talk because they are true. But when you sit down and think and reason deeply about your responsibility and people say, you don't seem to be doing enough. Look at our police station here. Looking at the equipment, even people inside SAPS saying we are behind criminals in terms of equipment and all of those things make you think seriously.
Minister, all that you're saying, it seems to me, demanded a serious discussion with the National Commissioner for all the reasons that you mentioned.
Yeah.
It seems to me to demand a serious discussion.
Yes.
And consultation.
Yes. And this is what we've been doing throughout the period after I got appointed.
There's a fundamental difference of view of the evidence that we've heard today. And for example, the two key people involved in this task team were never ever consulted about it, and that is Khumalo and General Mkhwanazi. They are the two people directly concerned. I mean, this directive, it doesn't even speak directly to this organogram or the structures in the police. It is directly aimed at three things: ports of entry, intelligence, and political task teams.
Yeah.
So I don't know who you speak to about ports of entry, maybe Home Affairs and maybe speak to them because they also have a role to play there and they should be consulted. Of course, intelligence, there's nothing that we hear from you that they were engaged or that the director of intelligence, who also happened to be Khumalo or Sabia, that they were engaged in all of this. There's no indication from you.
Now, don't be under the impression that when I got appointed, the next thing I did was to write directives. And the next thing that happens, I'm in the commission, I'm in the ad hoc committee. It didn't happen that way. You may have just been introduced in the situation and the challenges that we're having, but we had many discussions since I got appointed. I did indicate that the orientation which got elevated to discussions, which got elevated to decisions, took place. I've had before leave more than 28 meetings, more than that with the leadership of SAPS, and more than 9 meetings with National Commissioner alone. Now, it's another thing to say, what were we discussing? But I'm making it sound serious that I've had those meetings. And throughout those meetings, we were discussing serious stuff, serious issues. All of these things that you're mentioning, that Kumalo, National Commissioner, we have had discussions with them, even on just intelligence alone. And therefore, all the matters that are in my directive or in my directives were discussed. What was not discussed with them is the directives themselves. I have said I didn't discuss directives with anybody else before I wrote them. I wrote them, but the matters that constitute substance behind each of those directives are well known to the people that you're mentioning.
Well, can we just leave it there? And I'm sure honourable members of the committee will ask you more on this, but there's just fundamental disagreement that you at any stage discussed specifically the political task team and your thoughts about it before the directive was issued on the 31st of December 2024.
I have indicated very patiently that I could not discuss these directives with anyone for reasons that I've advanced. One of them, I've indicated that some of the people that are involved here were people who raised fundamental concerns with their safety. And I had to think, how do I, on one hand, bring them on board, and on the other hand, process their situation, which was convincing to me, was a fundamental issue to me. How do I combine the two? That's why I said at the beginning of the year, there was some thoughts about an inquiry, ministerial inquiry, because I couldn't ignore those things that they discussed. So I have made quite a serious attempt to convince you that I was in no position to discuss the actual directives with anyone before I wrote them, nor did I have the opportunity because I was working and then I had only 2 or 3 days. And that when I did so, there was nothing constitutionally wrong. There was nothing legislatively wrong. And I checked that. But I do want to say to evidence leader, Senior Counsel, National Political Killings Task Team is not all about policing in South Africa. It's not everything about policing in South Africa. There is a lot outside there. In fact, everything outside this, I don't have an English word. It's just part. Remember, this is not even a unit. It's a team. How much importance do you can't say it's a national priority work done by a team, important as it was, and having contributed as they did, but it's not. It can't be made a national priority on policing in South Africa amid the challenges that we have.